Welcome back to the Chiro Money Show, where we're helping chiropractors make better financial decisions so they can build stability in their finances and a lifestyle that they love. We're your hosts, Chris Shield and Scott Campbell, financial planners with Align Wealth.
Chris, you're just locked out of your house for an hour.
I was locked out, and I
Tell
guess
the world
for
what's
good
going on.
reason, maybe. First ever showing of our house, which is for sale. So
Yeah.
very exciting time.
Big changes coming up for your family.
Yeah, big changes coming up. I can share a little bit about that if any of our listeners care to hear. And it is kind of connected to what we're going to be talking about today, at least some of the reference material that we're going to refer to today. Yeah, we're making the big decision to relocate, mostly for lifestyle reasons. We want to try living closer to the mountains before it's too late.
For sure. Where are you heading off to?
We are headed off to Vernon, British Columbia.
Vernon, BC.
Yeah.
So coming from the small town of Devon, Alberta.
Yep. Big change. Big change.
For sure, big change. I love the intention that you've put into this decision, because you and your wife have been talking and discussing and dreaming about that possibility for a long time now, right?
Yeah. It's been a while. We've been considering it for a long time. I mean, the seed was probably planted many, many years ago, but it's been interesting over the last year or so, just kind of how we've navigated it. And actually I had a good friend that was asking me about that. It's like, how did you actually finally get to the place where you could make the decision? I don't know, but we just didn't rush it. We just kept coming back to it, kept being open with our communication and just considering all the options and all the alternatives and what our life could look like for the years ahead. Yeah, just kind of having that time. A lot of it was, when we were on holidays in the fall there, we had a lot of time together, a lot of time driving. So we were talking about life a lot. And I think coming back from that trip in November, we felt ready to make the decision. So
really cool.
Here we
Especially with 2 young kids, and it's going to be a big change for them as well. But it's a very exciting change. And the way I like that you're approaching it is like you're selling your home and you're going to go to Vernon and you're considering renting for the first year. So that gives you options, right? To kind of really test the waters of whether or not it's really for you and the family.
Totally. Options and flexibility, just like we say with our clients. That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
If for some reason we don't like it, well, we'll move on back. We know what life is like here.
For sure.
And if we do love it there, then maybe we'll look to buy at some point. But ultimately, we're just excited to be in the mountains, beautiful lakes, skiing. I don't know. I'll have to update our listeners on this, how many ski days I get in next year. And with
how many days on the lift.
Yeah, exactly.
No doubt. So a few things. I think, first of all, I'm sure the house is going to sell extremely quick with that blue wall behind you.
Yeah.
That's a selling point for sure.
For sure.
And I imagine the blue wall's coming to Vernon as well, right?
Yeah. It'll come.
Let's hope so.
It has to. Yeah.
It has to.
It's a little bit easier than moving a blue couch or something like that. So, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. All right.
Can we
enough about
start
me.
off the topic with this mind-blowing stat?
Yeah. Crazy, hey? So here's the stat. According to CPA Canada, there's about $1 trillion in Canadian wealth that's expected to transfer from the baby boomer generation to their children between 2023 and 2026.
Wild.
That's wild.
So a lot of that wealth has already been transferred if we're already in 2026, right?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it's already underway. Not sure how accurately they can forward project that number, but I'm sure they have their sources.
I'm sure. That's pretty wild to think about. That's a lot of money changing hands.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, the question was posed to me, and it was like, well, what should we do about this? If we know that inheritances are coming, I guess, the main question we want to sit with today is should that change how we look at our finances?
For sure.
If we know that we're likely to receive an inheritance, does that affect how much we're paying down our debt or saving and investing or our lifestyle decisions? So that's kind of what we want to explore today.
For sure. And we've had our fair share of navigating inheritances with clients, both that have received an inheritance to some degree, some quite large, some just nominal amounts, which still make an impact, as well as clients who are thinking or expecting that there's going to be an inheritance in their future.
For sure.
And that obviously is helpful when we're in the picture and we ask those questions, then we can start kind of thinking about that. And at least what we're going to get into today, take it into consideration. but
Yeah.
not build an entire financial plan around that assumption either.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, to jump ahead to the conclusion, I think that's kind of like the sound thing to do, right? Like the prudent thing to do. It's like we can consider it. It might impact some of the decisions, but we shouldn't dramatically change our lives and expect and plan on receiving that inheritance,
Mhm.
having that change our life, right? Like we can't just have 20 or 30 years of poor financial decisions and expect that an inheritance is going to fix everything.
For sure. Yeah,
And
we
even
were
with
talking
that,
about that.
like the number might not be enough, right? Like, so not everyone, well, let's just look at some numbers and some context here. So some more stats. So this study was done by CIBC Bank. Over the last decade, the average inheritance received by Canadians was about $180,000. So
Wow.
decent amount, but like not also life-changing amount. It's not like winning $1 million lottery or something, but certainly it's going to have an impact.
Yeah.
Couple of things to look at. A lot of that wealth or inheritance is primarily in real estate, specifically in
Hmm.
BC and Ontario, where real estate values are mightily inflated. So that's also interesting because that ability to pass on an inheritance might be limited based on where someone's living and their ability to move out of that place or desire to move out of that place. So, for instance, even if someone wanted to give their kids an inheritance, but what if they don't want to leave their primary residence, their house they've lived in for the last 30 years? They might not be able to
Yeah,
until something triggers that.
for sure. Not everyone ends up downsizing and they just are able to stay in their home because of good health. And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of factors that go into passing along real estate, or if it's a second property like a cabin or a cottage and things of that nature. Well, I'm sure, that boomer generation is probably well known for having probably more secondary vacation type properties than the millennial Gen X
Mhm.
generation ahead of them.
Mhm.
So those are being passed along. A lot of tax implications to take into
Oh,
consideration there too.
for sure. For sure. Yeah. And then the other interesting thing is that with regards to estate planning, nearly half of Canadians still don't have a will.
That always blew my mind.
Mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
So that just means that this huge, potentially a good chunk of this wealth that's set to transfer is doing so without clearly, planned out wishes of the deceased person. So
Hmm.
it makes things messier, more difficult for their children or their heirs, and it's often less than ideal from what the family expected or intended, and
Hmm.
can unfortunately also lead to a lot of relationship strain
Yeah,
within the
for sure.
family.
For sure can. I know we can come back to the topic of inheritances, but just on that topic of good planning, estate planning, getting a will in place and forward thinking when it comes to these inheritances and things of that nature is I think it's never been maybe more important for maybe the millennial Gen X generation to be having conversations with their parents about what this is all going to look like. Like, are you working with a good planner, your accountant? Do you have a lawyer? Is your will in place? I think it's probably fair to say that a lot of individuals in our generation, millennials, Gen X, would assume that their parents have things in good order, that they have a
Yeah,
will and estate documents in place. And then next thing you know, maybe something happens and they're like, oh my goodness, there wasn't a will in place. And I'm not sure what my parents' wishes were. And things are a bit of a mess and disorganized. And like you said, that can also add stress and strain amongst siblings and you name it.
for sure. Yeah, can be a really tough situation, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because it's one of those things that people don't want to talk about, right? So
Yeah. And
maybe that can,
either side of that
oh,
situation, the parents might not want to talk about like talking about money is taboo and like we got it handled, or it could just be also the younger generation not having the awareness and not knowing that they should be talking about it, or just making the assumptions that it is handled by their parents.
yeah, for sure. Maybe that should be one of the takeaways for our listeners is have a conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It could make a world of difference in the
Mhm.
impact and the outcome,
Mhm.
right?
For
Obviously, we're
sure.
talking about at some point your parents passing along, but having a plan with good intention with their wishes, what they want to see happen with passing along in the state, it deserves the care and attention and good planning.
For sure. For sure. All right, let's walk through this a little bit here. So, we've established that the wealth transfer is real. It's happening now. Many many of your parents are approaching later stages of their life where they're maybe downsizing or end of life conversations are happening. It is a one of the biggest generational events Canada's ever seen.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of this wealth could be coming our way. So let's look at what we could do with that and some kind of considerations around that. One other thing actually I want to share before we do that is just look at some stats of what is actually happening when people receive an inheritance. And we don't have a lot of data on this, but I was able to find a Sun Life study that asked people that did receive an inheritance what their plans were with it. And so that was interesting, insightful. And this actually zeroed in on millennials as well. The data showed that about 57% of millennials who expect an inheritance were planning to put it towards retirement savings. So that sounds pretty reasonable. Sounds like a pretty good option as the kind of the most likely outcome. So that's pretty sweet.
Okay.
Further to that, 55% say they would use it towards housing costs. So maybe paying down the mortgage, maybe getting into the market, whatever that looks like. And then 36% were using it towards either paying down debt or some cash flow related ideas.
That makes me think too that they're, when we think about maybe they're expecting an inheritance, they know something is coming. I'll save for my future retirement when that money comes, or I'm not going to aggressively pay down my debts or my mortgage because I'll take care of that business when the money comes. And sometimes it does, and that can be executed. But like we might get into, like circumstances do change. The amount of money that you think is coming may be significantly reduced for various reasons.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this next point on timing furthers that concern of like waiting for an inheritance, because we don't know when that's going to come unless your parents have clearly laid that out for you, which good on them. And they're willing to talk about it. Awesome. But that's not likely the case. And so more realistically, what the case is that our parents will live on average to their mid 80s, maybe 90, early 90s, something like that.
Yep.
And most of them half of them don't have a will. So that's probably when their wealth is going to be distributed.
Yeah.
Through their estate without a will. And a lot of people also are waiting until then to pass on any inheritances as well. So if your parents live till they're 85, how old would that make you, Scott, when you receive that inheritance? If your mom lives till she's 85?
Yeah, I'll be in my 60s, early 60s. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I would be similar. I would be, early 60s. So I don't know about you, but at that point, when I'm in my early 60s, I probably don't want to be in a position where I'm planning to have an inheritance.
Or relying on it to be part of your own retirement plan.
No, I would hope that there's no mortgage at that point. Mortgage is fully paid off. Kids are already done school and post-secondary school, likely at that point. Retirement's should be already mostly funded at that point in your early 60s.
Yeah. So the point you're probably thinking is like, it's not making much of an impact as what your parents are probably thinking that it would. Like when I pass along, they're going to get whatever I have left. And that's a good thing. But the impact of that is not as big as you might think, because if they've done responsible planning and they set themselves up for retirement, like you said, their kids have moved out of the house and doing their own thing, like, is the money, a benefit? Sure. But to what degree? What kind of impact will it actually make on their life?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is the core argument for the book Die with Zero, which we've referenced before and which I kind of alluded to in the preamble today. That's influenced a lot of my decision making around relocating, trying to live closer to the mountains. In this context, Die with Zero talks explicitly about making an impact when you can. It's like not waiting until you pass away and then leaving an inheritance. If you want to leave a legacy, leave it now, as soon as you can, because the sooner that you get that money to that charitable organization, the sooner they can put it to work, and you can also see the impact of it, which is also very powerful. And likewise, if we're talking about an inheritance that's being passed to your children, we've already established that at our early 60s, we hope to not need any inheritance. But I know for a lot of our listeners maybe if we're in our mid 30s and we probably could still have student loans, we might have a practice loan, or we might be looking at buying that practice, transitioning it from an associate to a practice owner. The impact that money could have at that stage is 10x what it has in your 60.
Yep. Especially when I think about those in a situation where they know their parents have a good deal of wealth, kind of getting to that area of like they have more money than they know what to do with, like their lifestyle needs are met. They're never going to run out of money. They're very, very comfortable. At some point, it's kind of inevitable that they can spend it all. Some of it's going to be coming down to the next generation. That's where it's almost even more powerful to have those conversations with your parents to be like, well, can we make an impact today that you can see, that you can be part of? There's got to be some sort of measure of joy and some sort of like it's fulfilling to see that impact while you're still alive for your kids, for your grandkids, to maybe create more experiences or to do something special for a charitable organization that you're fond of. Like the list goes on.
All right, we don't need to beat that dead horse too much more. People are probably getting sick of us talking about die with zero.
Yeah. Well, the last note on that is like when you also have maybe parents that are not in that situation and like they have enough to live a comfortable life. Maybe they're not like extremely wealthy, but they have enough and they're comfortable. But maybe you have a parent that's in that mindset where it's like they hold back on their life because they feel like they ought to pass along an inheritance. And I'm not saying that's a wrong thing, but I know if it were me talking to my mom, it's like go live as much life as you can. Like kind of the die with zero thing that we're talking about here. Like go live it up, like thoughtfully, well planned out, but like spend it all. If you die with zero, ideally, that would be my hope for my mom at least.
That's a great point. Okay, let's transition into another one of the concerns of kind of awaiting an inheritance. And this kind of concern, or whatever you want to call it, is simply, I'll call it this, the sandwiched generation. So speaking to people that are in this position where they're not only raising their own kids, but they're also having to care for their aging parents. So they're maybe supporting multiple households, and that is potentially having a very big impact on their finances.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of Canadians are paying out of pocket for their aging parents. Like, it's part of their monthly cash flow or monthly expenses or annual expenses that they are helping out their parents in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also having an impact on their own financial goals, their own retirement goals.
Yeah.
So that's going to influence future generations and their future inheritances if we have aging parents that are relying on us in some capacity. Then we add in the layer of like healthcare costs and maybe long-term care for individuals that can't, need supportive living, some kind of assistance in their later life.
Mm-hmm.
The financial cost for that can be quite astronomical on a monthly basis.
Yeah, they can be huge. Yeah. As much as we want to assume that our parents, or if it's your parent, that they may feel like they're going to have their good health forever and be able to stay in their principal residence forever, but that's not always the case. Things can change. Health can change. Unfortunately, it's part of life, and that can sometimes come with some significant costs.
So to kind of put it all together, would you say our take, Scott, is to kind of factor it in, consider it, but certainly not build the plan around it?
I don't think we've ever built a plan around an inheritance. We've talked about it. It's more so if and when an inheritance comes, there's going to be a big plan update, of course. And we want to build out your current plan, assuming that that's not factored in, that, basically we have the green light that we're on the right trajectory without that inheritance. And if that comes, then that's just a bonus.
Yeah. And I think that's, like I said in the start, like I think just it's the prudent thing to do, right? Like there's so many factors that we cannot come up with an accurate or reasonable assumption for, right? Yeah. Longevity. If everybody knew the day they were going to die, like financial planning would be so easy, right? But we don't. And truthfully, Canadians are living longer and longer. So if your inheritance doesn't come until the parents die, well, that money could arrive when you're 40, 50, 60, 65, 75, who knows, right? Then we factor in the long-term care costs, healthcare costs that can quickly erode an estate. We haven't talked about this yet, but family dynamics can change as well, right? So divorce, getting remarried, estate plans can change.
Yep. I think those are all the key takeaways in terms of the potential risks of purely just banking on a large sum of money coming down the line to, I won't say bail out, but like support or heavily support your retirement or pay down a mortgage or whatever the case might be.
For sure.
Aside from that, though, I think the other big takeaway that I think is just as equally as important that we touched on just earlier is having that conversation. Hopefully that's a positive thing in your relationship with your parents, to be able to have that open conversation. That could maybe vary in terms of how much detail you get into, but to at least understand that they have a plan for their estate, that they have their estate documents in good order, that you understand what their wishes are. That can just go a long way, just having that conversation in itself.
Yeah, for sure. Well said.
Yeah, I think we can wrap it there. I'll just leave it off with just saying that, once again, appreciate all the listeners. If you've been enjoying the Kyra Money Show here for a while, please do us a big solid and leave us a rating or review on whatever platform it is that you're listening to the Kyra Money Show, be that YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and share with someone that you think would get some value from conversations like this.
And also send in, if you have any ideas, any questions, anything you want us to do an episode on, send it in.
The way to do that, if you'd like to do such, go to thekyramoneyshow.ca. Right there on the homepage is an opportunity for you to submit a question that we can put together here on a future show.
Right on. Okay, thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Chris. We'll see you guys next week.
All opinions expressed on the Kyra Money Show are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. Nothing on this podcast should be considered financial, legal, accounting, or tax advice. Always consult your own team of licensed professionals before making decisions about your finances.